So hello everybody and welcome here up at BSN Network today. I am your host for this YouTube channel. I got my special guest here. We are going to run over, we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. We are going to first run over all the NFL games. We're going to talk about a few coaching jobs that are up for grabs. Paul Mularkey for the Titans is not coaching there anymore. We're going to run through some stats of the NFL games yesterday. Talk about the Nets, Knicks, and Rangers like always. We're going to talk about a few trades going on in the MLB. Adrian Gonzalez to the Mets, Garrett Cole to the Astros, and Andrew McCutchen to the Giants as well. So first we're going to get into it like always on Monday. We're going to get into the NFL games. Lots of good games. We had the Falcons, Eagles, Titans, Patriots, Jaguars, Steelers, and Saints, Vikings. All of them were very close, besides the Titans, Patriots game was quite a blowout, but all of them were in at least 5 or less point margins, so they were very close. They were good games besides that Titans game, which I think everybody expected it to be that way. How did you feel on some of the games?
Well, I got to tell you, I think as far as the NFL is concerned for this playoff weekend, it probably was the best playoff games that you could have had. Especially the nail biter that we saw right when the clock went out with that Minnesota game against the New Orleans Saints with that final pass to Diggs. You couldn't ask for a better ending to any of the out of all of the playoff games. It had to be one of the best endings out of all of them. Of course, like you said, Blair, the New England Patriots game, we kind of knew what was going to go on with the Titans coming up to New England, playing not only in that weather, but we knew that they really couldn't go up against the offense of Tom Brady and Belichick. What I will tell you, that's another stunner that I don't think anybody realized what was going to happen was that Pittsburgh game. For the Jaguars to go into Pittsburgh, play underneath those weather conditions with the experience of Tomlin, who is a Super Bowl head coach, Roethlisberger, who's also a quarterback Hall of Famer, and the offense and the weapons that he has is really unbelievable that the Jaguars were able to go in there, run the ball like they could. And Bortles really showed you that if he really wanted to throw that ball, he's finally come into his own a little bit, where he's actually getting some passing yards in there. For the last couple games that he's had, and you probably have some of the stats there, Blair, he threw towards the tail end. He had that 144-yard drive, which I think set up for a touchdown pass. So I'll tell you what, from that standpoint, I think the best two games was that Patriots-Jaguars game, and obviously you can't ask for anything better than that Minnesota game. But I'll tell you what, those Jaguars going up into New England, I know it's still a little bit of a challenge. Pittsburgh. Well, I'm saying now Jaguars have to go into New England.
Yeah.
They have to go into New England now, but even though they might be a little bit of the underdog, I want to put it past that that's going to be a close game, and if the Jaguars have a good game plan, then I think they might actually be able to squeeze out a championship victory and make their way to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I totally agree with you. Also, though, the Titans, unlike the Jaguars, the Titans were going into with the Patriots game, and they're not used to that kind of pressure and that type of game. And stuff like that. They weren't, but the Jaguars handled it perfectly fine, especially coming from Jacksonville. They're not used to the cold weather and the playing conditions that they were in yesterday. But Leonard Fournette had one heck of a game. Blake Bortles actually showed us what he can do when he could actually throw the ball, like you said, and he threw the ball very well. Unlike last week, he had more rushing yards than throwing yards, and that's what resulted in their 10-3 barely victory against the Bills last week. And now when you can actually see when that offense gets put together, they can actually put up 45 points. And, their defense yesterday, they have one of the best defenses in the league. Their defense yesterday did not look the best. I think every drive for every team was a touchdown pretty much. It was a high-scoring game. And, once I knew that beginning of that game where it was 14-zip going into the second quarter, knowing that, and this is almost what goes with the Patriots, a lot of these players on these teams, especially when you're going in as expecting to win. When you start losing, it starts to get in your head and you start to struggle. So when I saw that 14-0 deficit happening, I knew that the Steelers, it's going to be a tougher climb because they get all in their heads and they all know that, they lose this game. I mean, everybody's going to be like, what the heck happened? So yeah, I think all these games were very good. I do think the best was the Vikings. Stefon Diggs with that, probably one of the best catches you'll ever see in a playoff game, at the end of the game anyway. I mean, at first when I saw him when I saw him catch the ball, I was like, why are you running? Why you keep on running? Because clock was about to run out, but I didn't know that no one was in sight of him. 43 there in that final play made a very, very bad mistake. He shouldn't have tried to go for his legs. He should have just wrapped him up and held him in bounds, and that would have been the game right there. Stefon Diggs did catch the pass before that led them to use that timeout, and I think that's a veteran move by Stefon Diggs, even though he's quite younger, but sometimes younger players can make those veteran moves. As a younger player, he made a very good veteran move there by not stepping out of bounds and trying to kick the field goal. Not saying that I lost hope in their field goal and their kicker, but he made a good move there, not just stepping out of bounds, seeing what he had upfield, and he ended up taking the route upfield to win the game for him. So first, for these NFL games, we have the Falcons and the Eagles game. By the way, I went 2-2 on my NFL picks. The Eagles won 15-10. How did you feel in this game?
Well, they knew when the birds were going to get together, and the Falcons coming into the Eagles game. A lot of people were really thinking with the experience of Matt Ryan, the Eagles haven't been to not only a championship game, but even in the Super Bowl appearance in quite some time. So where you have Matt Ryan coming fresh off of a Super Bowl appearance and all the playoff experience that he had last year, the favorites definitely was geared towards the Falcons. But I'll tell you what. Another issue that people were wondering was how Foles was going to marry up.
Yep.
You're talking about a backup quarterback. Once Wentz went down, the whole entire Wentz wagon brigade was up in arms in regards to wondering if Philly's chances of even getting in, they clinched a division, but even how far they were going to go deep into the playoffs was extremely being questioned, even though they had the bye going in. But I'll tell you what. Playing in Philly, that stadium is unbelievable. They got probably one of the best fan bases out there. This was a big shocker to know that some of the weapons that Atlanta had with Jones, the passing arm that Matt Ryan has, and their running game, they just didn't put enough package together for their game plan to execute it. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Philly was able to come out on top and head to the championship series.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of thinking is because Eagles did not. I did not pick the Eagles to win. I picked the Falcons to win. I expected that this Nick Foles, he's been in the league longer with Carson Wentz, even though they probably have about the same playing time since Nick Foles has been a backup. But, either way, this is the thing about this, and everybody's, I'm going to be thinking about this for a while, is, Nick Foles does not have any playoff experience, but so does Carson Wentz. He doesn't have any, but obviously, you would have felt more safer with MVP candidate. Not really anymore. There's still a chance he wins it in Carson Wentz. You want him to go out there more. And, Nick Foles, despite only having 0 TDs, he still found ways to get 23 completions out of his 30 attempts. He still found ways to get, completions and miss interceptions. He did not get any interceptions, which was good because, like he was saying, how they Falcons have in the beginning of the year, Falcons had their offense was awful, and now their offense has stepped up, and they're doing good. But that was why I think they also won, is because they kept the balls, they kept any bad turnovers they kept them to not having any turnovers and not allowing the Falcons to try to convert on any turnovers. So that was good by Nick Foles. Matt Ryan had 22 completions, 36 attempts, 210 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions. His one TD was actually thrown to Devontae Freeman. He had 5 receptions, 26 yards, 5.2 is his average, and one TD at 1 TD. And I think partially at the end of the game there, I saw Matt Ryan looking towards Julio Jones in the end zone twice. I saw him looking there, and he threw it to him. Didn't have any luck with that. I think they should have looked for another option because Julio Jones has not had the year of last year that he was having. He's not had the greatest of years, but he still has a good year this year. And one thing I have to say, and I have to give it up for the Falcons, is the way that their offense turned around this year after beginning of the year with their offense looked like the bad news bears out there. Their offense was very, very bad with the coordinators and everything like that. To try to come back and try to do something in the playoffs, I give a lot of credit to them. But, it's also a tough environment. Atlanta, even if they did have an outdoor stadium, the weather is not that cold there, at least I don't think. Another game, and this is why a lot of teams are underdogs, another team coming from a dome stadium, not used to playing in windy, cold conditions, went out and had to go play in Philly. But, tough game for them and a tough loss, obviously. Nick Foles had completions, 23 on 30 attempts, 246 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. LeGarrette Blount, he had 9 carries, 19 yards. He had averaged 10 yards, and he had 1 touchdown. That was the only touchdown for them of the game. How do you feel about those players?
Well, I think the stats speak for themselves, especially when you're talking about LeGarrette Blount, especially with the running game on that portion of it. Jones, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, here you had, I think what Atlanta was really suffering with was when they had the loss of their offensive coordinator moving on last year to the head coaching position, and then coming in with a whole new game plan. I think that really took a little bit of getting used to in the beginning of the season. So I think the Falcons, like you mentioned, Blair, really was able to, in the middle of the season, finally come together and probably be pretty fortunate that they actually made it to the divisional playoff round. But I think with the loss of their, trying to redo their offense, if you will, and everybody getting back on board, I think maybe next year coming in, it'll be a little bit better because now they have a system in place, at least a full season with a new OC, and maybe they can get this thing together next year.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to give the Falcons any excuses, but possibly if it was never for that offensive coordinator stumble, they could have possibly clinched home field advantage, and they could have possibly never had to go into Philly. Now, you never know what could have happened, but still, obviously having a home game's better. But if they never stumbled upon that offensive coordinator problem, whatever you want to call it, they could have possibly clinched home field advantage, and they could have possibly had a first-round bye instead of going, Eagles had the first-round bye, was all rested up for this game, and, Falcons away for both their games, not having a first-round bye is tough. So, going into those conditions, it was a tough game to try to pull out, but they brought up a good fight. But after all, it was the Eagles with a 15-10 victory. I lost that game in my picks. So next up is the Titans and the Patriots. I think we all knew what was going to happen. I think this was one of the worst games out of all these playoff games. What do you have for this game?
Well, to tell you the truth, I've got to tell you, you hit it right on the head with that. I think everybody kind of knew that it was a gift that the Titans actually made it this far, but even traveling into the Patriots. I'm not taking anything away from Mariota. I think that he had some really clutch plays, and he really shined on that wild card game that actually got them into this divisional round. So really on the heels towards the tail end of that wild card game is Mariota really came through, and I think he really showed you what his future's like if he stays healthy and they could put some pieces around him and build that program. So really kudos to them to even make it to a divisional round playoff game. But I will tell you, watching that game, it was really mismatched. I think we all kind of knew them going in there. You just couldn't even do a real matchup between the Titans and the experience with all those Super Bowls, with all those championship rings that they have, and with all those playoff experience that they have between Belichick and Brady. It was really going to be a monumental task for the Titans to go in there and try to win that game. But hey, they made it to the divisional round. They build up from there. Probably nobody saw this coming, and they build up for next year.
And nobody saw the win against the 18-point deficit comeback last week against the Chiefs. But I totally agree with you. I think the Titans, and this is the thing. I'm going to say it now, and I know I've said it since I've had my YouTube channel. I've at least said it like 20 or 30 times, and you might be getting annoyed by it. But the Titans, I'll give you three teams right now. I'll give you a few teams right now. The Titans are in a great spot right now as their history goes. They get a few pieces to build around Mariota, get a few more defensive guys because their defense is not the best. A lot of people don't talk about their defense, more their offense. So get a few guys to build around Mariota because obviously Decker's getting to that age where he's starting to get older. They do have a running game, but you need a passing game. I know Mariota's he can do a great job on the run, but still, I'm sure he likes to pass it a lot. So they need more assets on this team as wide receivers go. And this is what they're in a bright future right now. They get like you said, they made it to the division round. Nobody saw that coming. And now, and the team next to them, the team Patriots right now, they do not have a bright future. You might think I'm crazy, but in 3 or 4 years, you're probably going to see more than like with all this hype now about Belichick being out of there. You're going to see Brady out of there, and you're just going to see that team stink. There's already rumors now that Patricia and Josh McDaniels, the D and the O coordinator, are going to be out of there next year. We'll talk about that soon. I think here the Patriots aren't in they don't have a bright future. Titans do. For example, 49ers have a bright future. Jets kind of have a bright future. I'm glad to see what this Titans team can do in the next few years. Obviously, it was a 35-14 victory. Patriots won, obviously. Marcus Mariota had 22 attempts and 22 completions on 37 attempts. He had 254 yards, 2 TDs, and 0 interceptions. Corey Davis had both of his touchdowns. He had 5 receptions, 63 yards, 12.6 was his average, and he had 2 TDs, which was both of Mariota's, who he threw it both to Davis. Brady had 35 of 53 on completions and attempts. He had 337 yards. He had 3 TDs and 0 interceptions. Gronk had 1 TD. White had 2 touchdowns. Hogan had 1 touchdown, and Bolden had 1 touchdown. So I think overall, it was obviously tough for the Falcons. Not the Falcons. It was obviously tough for the Titans to come into this game and try to win, but they made it good enough. They went. A lot of people didn't expect them to make it to this point, but now they build around Mariota, like you were saying, and can move on to next year. So now we move on to the game that no one expected was coming. A Jaguars win 45-42 against the Steelers. Thoughts on this game?
Yeah, nobody thought that was coming at all. Especially with the Jaguars coming in there. We kind of knew the defenses were really good on both teams, both Pittsburgh and the Jaguars, but on the offensive side of the ball, nobody expected. And then Bortles has been criticized his whole entire season, almost his whole entire career. Really, he had 3 good weeks in December where he had his most amount of yards complete and touchdowns. But after that, only 3 weeks out of X amount of years playing in the NFL, nobody expected that the Jaguars were going to go into Pittsburgh, and especially with the home field advantage of the crazy yellow towels screaming and yelling over there, and with that weather, But let me tell you something, that was a most unexpected game. I was actually shocked myself, even to see a score that high, 45-42, going right down to the wire. Bortles, and he's been criticized through social media. A couple weeks ago, I don't know if it was some of his friends or colleagues or even himself, were taken back by all the criticism as far as, even though they're making it into the playoffs, but really his quarterback capability. But his numbers speak for themselves. So really, he might be a little taken back as far as how he was being criticized, but his numbers aren't there as a true starting quarterback in the NFL. But going into Pittsburgh, even though it was a big running game for them, and it has been for the Jaguars over the last several weeks, is winning on the ground. But sometimes you win these games on the ground. If you can pound and ground the ball, that's half the battle. But being able to come up and actually throw the ball towards the tail end, if Bortles keeps this up, then I'll tell you what, they might have a pretty good shot up in New England. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but if they can put a game plan together, then it should be a competitive game.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. Bortles last week had more rushing yards than passing yards. He had 89 rushing yards and only 87 passing yards, which is really bad. Obviously, he was playing against a tougher defense this week. This defense, though, and this defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers is a very good defense, but their secondary isn't the best. But obviously, still, every win is a win and a loss is a loss. So good win for the Steelers here. Good win for the Jaguars. I'm glad the Steelers got knocked off. Bortles, yeah, he totally did show that he's looks like a good quarterback. Obviously, though, and I think in the future, I know this year has been a great year, but I think depending on how next year goes, if it goes like this again, maybe they'll sign him to a one-year deal. But I think in the future, you're going to see Bortles out of there. Bill Bortles, I agree. He's a good quarterback if you give him. He's a good quarterback if he can just have. He can put up good numbers, if he just stays calm. And I think he's not the greatest of runners. And, if this offensive line can keep him to where he can just pass, he can be a good quarterback, because obviously last week they couldn't really pass the ball because they're causing lots of pressure, and he had to throw little quick slant routes. He was struggling. So if this offensive line can hold him to pass, he can do well. Obviously, though, I don't think he should be their QB forever, just because I think they can find somebody else, and I think I really just think they can find. I don't think he's the best. He did show up this game. I'm glad he did, because I always like to see players coming up in big ways that have not done so well this year, but he did very well yesterday. He had 14 completions, 26 attempts. He had 214 yards, 1 touchdown, and 0 interceptions. For Leonard Fournette, he had a great game. He had the first 2 touchdowns in the game. He's a very good running back. He's in his rookie season coming out of LSU, no one expected him to do this well, but he's done very, very, very good this year. 25 carries, 109 yards, a 4.4 average, and three touchdowns. Very good. For the Steelers team, obviously, like you said, the Steelers team was so much. They were predicted so much to win. They were predicted by a lot to win. Obviously, beginning of the year, Jaguars did beat the Steelers, but that's one. That's not a playoff. It's not a playoff game, and 2, it is week 2, so everybody's getting the groove of things by week 2. Some of these teams start off 0-2, they'll make a comeback. Things like that. Or week 2 or 3, I think it was, but they beat them. And it was earlier in the year. No one expected the Jaguars even to be at this point. So, a lot of things go into that earlier in the year. But, I think the Steelers team came out pretty good, but I think their offense did perfectly fine. Their defense is really struggling, and like you said, their defense is good, and it is. But this game, and this just goes to show you, when Blake Bortles can do things, he can be very good. Ben Roethlisberger had 37 completions, 58 attempts, 469 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Antonio Brown had 7 receptions, 132 yards, 18.9 was his average, and he had 2 touchdowns. 45-42 win. Jaguars, big win. They head into New England, obviously huge underdogs, but we'll see what happens next week. I think they have a chance. They show up like this week, and this Patriots defense is not the greatest of defenses. So if they can do what they did against the Steelers defense, get Tom Brady on his heels and get him to get in his head like they did with Roethlisberger and this whole Steelers team, they have a chance to win. Now we move on to the Vikings-Saints. This is a crazy game. Stephon Diggs clutch. How do you feel about this game?
Yeah, this had to be, I think, out of every, probably made history right here with this playoff game. I think this is going to go down in the history books. Not only that, but having to bring the New Orleans Saints players back out on the field so they could finally finish the game. Even though they didn't go for the PAT, they were going for the 2-point conversion, if you will, and then just actually just went into the victory formation. But what a game this is. And what I think is really special about this is Keenum. Here is a quarterback that wasn't always as highly rated when he was with the Rams under Fisher for a little bit. Obviously, they brought Goff in. He loses his job over there as a starter, then becomes the almost like the third string quarterback as we see the starter for the Minnesota Vikings going down. Bradford goes down. And then the third stringer comes in, and it shows you how much talent Keenum has. He truly is. He truly could be a starter underneath the proper coaching.
Yeah.
But to make a play like that with the time ticking down, and final third and long as far as the first down, having to get onto the outside to even think that it's going to be trying to get into field goal range. And Diggs making that swoop, and the defenders knowing that if they touched them, they were in a really bad spot. Obviously, they overran him because they didn't want to touch him because they're afraid of, obviously, the pass interference call or any type of penalty, which the New Orleans Saints wanted to stay away from. But Diggs to take that, and you hit it on the head before, Blair, as far as being able to do a veteran move like that, to not only, one, make that catch, but two, watch where his feet were. Keeping those feet in bounds, seeing that upfield, he's got nothing but end zone. And I thought it was really a magical way to finish that game. So kudos to the Vikings, and I'm rooting for them going through it's not going to be an easy road, but I think it's going to be a great matchup when they head over to Philadelphia. But I think it was a pretty awesome game.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think Stephon Diggs with that big catch, and like I said before, 43 should not have dove under, and like you said, yeah, I know they were trying not to get any penalties, but he did catch it, and he was in the air while he was catching it, so who knows what could have happened. They probably still would have made the field goal, but who would ever thought with 10 seconds left, having to use their final timeout, and who would ever predicted in the beginning of the year Case Keenum would even be playing in a playoff game at that particular moment. No one would have ever probably predicted that. Bradford got injured, and like you said, when you actually put, and that's some of these players, you actually put, or a right coach, or you put a player under the right coach on a team, he can actually do some things. You see when you could put this Giants team or a Jets team when they were having Rex Ryan, they were doing very bad. They're still not doing the best, but you can tell they're getting improved and they're starting to actually be in these games. They're playing very well, the Jets. But back to this, and almost like the Giants, you put them with a good head coach like Coughlin. They did things there. When you put them with Ben McAdoo, they can't do anything. So, obviously Case Keenum's like that. You put him under right coach, and, the Rams coach, he was very bad. Did nothing there. Nothing good. So Drew Brees had 25 completions, 40 attempts, yards 294. He had 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Those 2 interceptions, possibly, you subtract one of them and you only have one, you possibly could have won this game, but that's why interceptions, any turnover, anything that goes bad, every move you make could matter in a game. Thomas, 2 touchdowns. Kamara had 1 touchdown. Case Keenum had 25 completions, 40 attempts, 318 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Murray had 1 touchdown. McKinnon had 1 touchdown. Diggs had 1 touchdown. I obviously have to go through Diggs' stats because he was the one who, partially the reason why he won the game. And if it wasn't even, and not even only that, he it was the perfect throw by Case Keenum to set up Diggs for that big run there. Big TD reception, 6 and yards 137. He had an average of 22.8. He had 1 touchdown. That 1 touchdown was probably one of the clutchest touchdowns you will see ever in a playoff game. One of the most miracles. I mean, when I was sitting there watching the game, I did not expect that to happen. I don't think anybody did expect that to happen. So, it was a very, very, very good game, hard-fought game. Both teams played very well, and both teams deserve to be there, but obviously Vikings are moving on. So, for the final NFL Conference Championships, we got the Jaguars away against the Patriots Sunday at 3:05 p.m., and we have the Vikings-Eagles on Sunday at 6:40 p.m. So, those are going to be 2 good games. I can't wait. So that's what I got for part 1. That is part 1. Next up, part 2, we have a lot of stuff to go through. I might split it, actually. I might do some stuff tomorrow. I'll probably do the Nets, Knicks, and Rangers, and probably the Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels. And then maybe I'll do Mike Mularkey, but I might do Garrett Cole and Andrew McCutcheon's trade. And Adrian Gonzalez trade tomorrow, so now I have stuff to talk about as well. A lot of stuff to talk about tomorrow too, just because. But we'll see how we're doing on time. So that is part 1. Thanks for joining the show.
Well, I want to say thanks, Blair, for having me. I think to your audience out there, I think it was a true honor to be on your show today. I think the potential that you have and your ratings are going up each day. To all the YouTubers out there, and down the road. As you increase in your viewers and your listeners out there, I just want to thank you for having me on today. I thought it was a really neat experience.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. So that is part 1, and hope you enjoyed it. So I will see everybody in a little bit for part 2. Hope you enjoyed part 1. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it.